Yo, good people. I'm Larry Wiggs, and this is another IC 109 presentation. I want to tell you something, good people. This is a poster. This is a Basquiat, okay? Of course, it's not original. It's not an original work. I can't afford a Basquiat, okay? Um, I went online 3 years ago and I purchased a poster at a website. I think it's called allposters.com. And I had this is a work by Jean-Michel Basquiat. It's a poster reproduction. It cost me about $100 for the size, for its size. I spent $100 on a doggone poster, y'all. After I spent that much on it, I decided, well, I spent that much on it, I need it to be framed. So it's not an original, but I put it in a frame to just to represent. Yo, y'all, my numbers 109. Those are my numbers. This is my channel, and this has to be one of my favorite Jean-Michel Basquiat works of art because, of course, the number 109 is right there in the artwork. Right there. Boom, bam. Right there. Okay. The story about how I found this work of art, because Jean-Michel Basquiat created thousands of works of art. Not all of them have I seen, right? But this one in particular is my favorite because, of course, 109 is right there. Pardon me. 109 is right there on the work of art. Right there. 10 and 9. So, the story about how I discovered this work, how I found it, how I encountered it is interesting, and I'm going to share it now. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it's pretty late. I'm at home, in my home. I have this on my wall, and a night similar to this one. It was around 11 o'clock. Right now, it's even close to 11. Let me check the clock. It is 11:17, okay? Right now. So this is kind of a usual thing for me to be up at this hour. It's not because I work and I don't stay up this late, but tonight it's a holiday weekend, Memorial Day weekend, 2025, just for transparency, but also just for to document this moment. Okay, so anyway, I think I'm terrible at telling stories. My goodness. Get it together. Make this fun and interesting for your viewer. because your viewer is watching and just saying, "Come on, man, hurry up." All right. But the story I want to tell you before I get into this painting is how I discovered it, okay? It was a night like tonight. I was up and I was bored. And I turned on my DVD player. I have a DVD player. It's connected to my iMac, right? I got a DVD, and the DVD was about Jean-Michel Basquiat, the artist who created this. I put it in. I started watching it. At some point, as I'm watching it, this painting came on the screen, and when they showed this painting, they showed that the painting had the number 109 on it. And so when I saw the number 109 flash across the screen, I jumped up to stop the DVD and to rewind it, and say, "Oh, what painting is that? I've got to know that painting because those are my numbers." And Jean-Michel Basquiat painted my numbers in a painting. I need to know what artwork that is. And so I got the information, and then I looked at the whole painting, and I was just like, it didn't matter to me on that night, some 3, possibly 4 years ago, maybe even 5 years now. No, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. it didn't matter to me what all was in the artwork. All I knew is that my favorite artist had written my favorite numbers on a work of art, and I was like immediately captivated, drawn to that work. I was like, we're done. That's my favorite Jean-Michel Basquiat artwork, period. That's when I went to the All Posters website to get a poster of it, because I was like, I'm blowing it up. I'm putting it on my wall. I got to have it. So that's the story about that. However, one minor detail, my story is about how I found 1, 0, and 9 on a Basquiat work of art. You know what time it was when I discovered it? This story would be far more impressive if I discovered it at 1:09 a.m. But it wasn't 1:09 a.m. It was 11:09 p.m. It was 11:09 p.m. To be transparent, honest, it was probably around 11:07 when I found it. And when I got up out of bed and I stopped the DVD and then I rewound it and I did all this stuff, I grabbed my cell phone and I took a picture from the monitor, and then I was gonna post that picture to Facebook to show everybody, hey, my number is 109. They're right there. And it was when I was texting, or when I was trying to upload the post, that I realized that I looked at the clock and I said, basically, I said, I discovered this 109 in this painting at 11:09 p.m. That's when I was posting it to Facebook. So 11:09 p.m. I saw 109 in this painting. It's my favorite. That's the quirky, coincidental nature, synchronistic nature of me discovering this work of art. But then the quirks and the mysterious nature about this work, they don't end there. They just continue. All right. So this is what this video is going to start off with. I mean, this is where I want to take you. I want to take you on a journey to how I deciphered what all is here. So, immediately looking at this work of art, I was confronted with the words and the images rather. And I read the words and I thought to myself, you know what? Alexander the Great is a historic figure. Jean-Michel Basquiat, the artist, is talking about history. He has 3 words: drum, phlegm, and thumb. Each word is spelled differently. However, they all have the same final syllabic tone, right? It's drum, phlegm, thumb. It sounds like an M. Sound at the end, drum, phlegm, and thumb. So I figured, oh, well, Jean-Michel went from talking about history. A simple reference of a name is how Jean-Michel Basquiat talks about history. He's referencing history. Then he uses these 3 words here to have a discussion about linguistics. And then he has a single word, patois, here, which furthers his discussion about linguistics, and even critiques linguistics to state something about how there's a quote that says, a language is a dialect with an army. And so patois can be considered not a language in the same vein as that quote. If someone says patois, are they diminishing the importance of that language? Perhaps they are. I'm suggesting that they are. And so that's part of the critique. So we went from history now to talking about linguistics. Okay? And then over here, we've got China and Haiti, which I think, with these arrows pointing in these directions, he was talking about the perhaps a trade imbalance between China and Haiti, showing the arrows from Haiti, two arrows from Haiti going to China, as if Haiti is exporting more to China and China is giving less back because there's one arrow from China to Haiti. I don't know, but this has to do with business and economics. So we're talking about history, linguistics, business, and economics. And Jean-Michel Basquiat, the artist, furthers that discussion of of business and economics when he writes FKGD, which to I think to anybody it looks like it's it's as if the middle finger is being thrown to God. GD, like what is happening? But I did some research, and FKGD was actually the ticker symbol for a company that dealt with, I mean, it's part of the business and the economics discussion that Basquiat had going on here, right? So we go from history to linguistics to business and economics. And then we have this number, this 109-235, and then in parentheses SIC, which is a classification, standard industrial classification number that it references metals, right? The ores, the metals that are extracted from earth. So we go from business and economics over there. Well, actually, we continue with business and economics with the discussion with this number over here. That's still business and economics. And then of course, with utterances or with mentions these words, liver, lungs, and chest, we have biology, anatomy, okay, and human, I don't know, physiognomy, okay, the physical body, all right. More historic figures are mentioned. Toussaint Louverture, which has a connection to Haiti, of course, and the artist's own history. I won't get into all of that, but my point is very simple. I've said a lot, but in saying all of that, what I'm saying is that Jean-Michel had a discussion going on here that ranged from history to linguistics to business and economics to to anatomy, right? He had a lot. That was and that was my initial focus when I saw this work. I said, wow, he's talking about so many things here. This is cool. It's a very deep work of art. I thought that was my initial impression. Now, going beyond my initial impressions, not only was that my, I'm going to take a break here, y'all. We're back with IC 109. So, this is my favorite Jean-Michel Basquiat work of art because 109, my numbers are right there in it. What I'm doing is I'm explaining the process by which I was able to ingest this work of art, okay? Ingest this work of art. When I initially saw this work of art, let's recap. When I initially saw this work of art, I saw a conversation, I saw a discussion, a lecture, if you will. Jean Michel was, well, maybe not a lecture. Jean Michel wasn't, like that, but it could certainly be a lecture. He's talking about historic figures, so he has a historic discussion going on. He's got business and economics working over here, plus with this number over here, possibly a mining company. That's business economics. We've got the figure with the chest, the liver, and the lungs, talking about human biology, physiognomy, you know, kinesthetics, the body, linguistics. So it's a very deep discussion on so many levels, right? Which this work of art really exemplifies Jean-Michel's genius. It's like, yo, Jean-Michel could hang with the best of them. He could talk to you on many different levels on different topics. That's what this really said to me. That was the message I first got. Okay, Jean-Michel's a deep thinker. He's got a lot on his mind. Period. Period. That was it. And then one night, not unlike tonight, I was watching Nipsey Hussle's video for the music. Nipsey Hussle, y'all. If you can see Nipsey Hussle right here. I was watching a music video for Nipsey Hussle's video entitled Crenshaw and Slauson True Story. Now, mind you, everything I'm telling you right now is true. Okay. Well, I was watching that video and then I came across a picture. All right, so this is the picture that I was referring to. All right. Um, Now the I came across this picture as I was watching the video, Crenshaw and Slauson, True Story. The picture captivated my imagination. It piqued my interest. It piqued my curiosity because when I saw the picture, I immediately, I immediately knew where Nipsey Hussle was when that photo was taken because I had been to that location. I was there. The location is a place called Shibuya Crossing in Shibuya, Japan. It's in Tokyo. Very famous location. Do your own research. I'm not going to spend any more time discussing it. But I had been there myself. And so when I saw that Nipsey had been there too, then it was like, whoa. But it was the fact that I had been there that I recognized the place. It's not, I can't say that it's immediately recognizable. He could have been, you could have confused his the picture for Times Square, New York, Germany, or many other places. But it was the fact that 109 was in the image, the number 10 and 9, that it told me that's Shibuya Ichimarukyu, Shibuya 109. That's that fashion mall that I learned about. So I knew exactly where he was in that photo. So it was like, it was a moment. I said, oh my gosh, because 109, 10-9, those are my numbers. And then to see Nipsey and my numbers together, it hit different. Yeah. Well, I was watching that video and then I came across a picture. Now, if you can see this picture, if you can see what I'm pointing at, then great. This is a work of art that includes that picture that I saw. It actually includes the picture that's in the video that I saw. Let me see if you can see that. Checking the gate. Yeah, you can see it. It's in the shot. All right, so, all right. 109 is right here, y'all. 109. Anywho, I was watching Nipsey Hussle's video and I was taken aback when I saw a picture in the video that I hadn't seen before. I believe there are a couple of versions on the internet, and one version does not have the picture in it. And somehow that night I was watching the video and I saw that picture in that video. Now, when I saw that picture, I saw this picture here, not the painting. I created the painting using the picture, but it's here. I'm sure you can't see the detail in the video. It's not, the quality isn't that good, but and it's a dark canvas and a dark picture. But here's the point, right? I saw this picture, and when I saw this picture, boom, immediately I thought, hey, you know what? This picture reminds me of this work of art. That's all that I needed. That was the only spark. That was the only thought I needed for me to say, you know what? Let me look at this more closely. And when I looked at the picture, I could clearly see between the picture and the painting similarities. I could clearly see that there was a male figure, or rather, what I think is a male figure. See, when Jean-Michel created his artwork, he would often paint male figures representing himself, unless he wrote a name to symbolize, hey, I'm talking about somebody else. So I was like, okay, so Jean-Michel painted himself, but you know what? This male figure, it possibly could be someone else. And I started to say, hey, could it be Nipsey Hussle? Because you have a male figure right here, and then right to the left, you have the numbers 109 on the painting. Well, the picture has a male figure. I know you can't see it well, but there's a male figure. The picture is of Nipsey Hussle, a male figure here. And then to the left, you got 109. You've got 109. And so that's what it struck me. I said, wait a minute, a male figure 109 to the side. That's the picture. This is the painting. And then it was like, are they one and the same? And that was the impetus. That was the moment that made me wonder. Now, you see, I followed this idea because I am not averse to, this sort of creative quandary, this sort of mystery. I mean, after all, the reason why 109 is even a thing for me or for anyone else is because I have followed 109. When it appears, I notate, I document it, and it's led me to this point where I've had some wild encounters with 109, many of which I did not understand them until finally the day that I did understand them, when there were events that occurred that I could only surmise were signs. So anywho, back to the story. This was another sign, and I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because this picture and this painting are too similar. So it was over a year after I bought this poster, over a year or so, when I said, you know what? Let me look more closely at this picture and let me figure out what else is here. And then it just started to hit. It started hitting, because then I said, you know what? That picture was taken in an Asian country. And Jean-Michel surprisingly wrote the name of an Asian country on the work. I said, wow, it's kind of a stretch to say that the picture and the painting are connected because of the word China, but it was at least somewhere to start. It's like, that's curious. And then I guess I did some research on Nipsey Hussle's murder, when I learned that the bullets that were fired at Nipsey Hussle, well, they pierced his chest. And what word did Jean-Michel Basquiat choose to write on the male figure? But chest. And then I read about Nipsey Hussle's murder some more, and it said that the bullets that pierced his chest, or that the bullets that struck his chest, pierced his liver and his lungs. At that point, I was like, mind blown. Like, wait a minute. That picture, initially the idea, the thought, the impetus was, hey, that picture and that painting are alike. Now I'm saying the picture was taken in Japan, an Asian country, and there's an Asian country on the painting. That's even a stronger connection between the two. And then the chest, liver, and the lungs are even more, even stronger connections, because those are undeniable. Just like, whoa, how is that even possible? Now, I tried to think about it and I tried to rationalize it and tell myself, wait a minute, like, this is all coincidence, right? And so to explain it away, I learned that, well, the chest, the largest organs in the chest are the liver and the lungs. And given that explanation, you might say, well, there you have it. Like, Jean-Michel really had no choice but to choose the liver and the lungs when writing about the chest area. So he didn't have many options. But I mean, he certainly did have an option, because also inside of the chest is the heart, like the biggest, the most important, you know, organ. He could have chosen heart, but he didn't. He chose liver and lungs. So the choices that Jean-Michel Basquiat made in creating this work of art, they just were the right choices. And maybe it is just a coincidence, but man, when things start adding up the way that they were for me, after I looked at it, and then I looked at the number 47, and I was like, hold up. How many times was Nipsey Hussle shot? And they said between 10 and 11 bullets, pierced his body. It's like 7 plus 4 equals 11. Was Jean-Michel telling us that 47 bullets, 11 bullets pierced his body, his chest, liver, and lungs? Man, so I was just like, wow, okay. But it didn't stop there, y'all. It didn't stop there, because going back to the discussion about history and Alexander the Great, well, Alexander the Great was from Greece. Nipsey Hussle's brand was called the Marathon Clothing brand, or the Marathon Clothing Store. It's everything is the Marathon. Well, if you know anything about Greek history, you know that the very first marathon was run in Greece. So the word Alexander the Great has a very distinct connection to Nipsey Hussle, because Nipsey could have chosen any other name for his brand, but he chose a name that resonates with Greece. And the name Alexander the Great absolutely resonates with Greece, because he was a Greek leader. And then, not only was it the marathon that, created the connection, but the legend of the very first marathon is about a runner. I hope I don't mess up his name. Phidippides, if I'm not mistaken. This guy ran from the city of Marathon to the city of Athens to tell the people that the people of Greece or the people of Marathon were victorious. So his message was victory. Hello, Nipsey Hussle's first debut album. That's redundant. Nipsey Hussle's debut album was entitled Victory Lap. So that's another reference to Greece. The marathon, victory, that is a reference to Greece. And in this same painting that I keep saying is Nipsey Hussle, we have that same reference. Everything goes back there. Now, when I'm not done, the coincidences don't stop in. They don't end there. Look, Jean-Michel took a blue crayon, oil pastel, and he scribbled that over the forehead of this male figure. I call it a male figure because that's all I see. When I show this painting to others, particularly students, they say, oh, it looks like a monkey and stuff, but their minds are colonized. That's my retort, because our society is not trained to see a black figure and to I don't know, extol, to hurl positive affirmations, positive, things toward it. That's how ingrained our colonial. That's how ensnared our colonial minds are. Because the first thing they say is, "Oh, it looks like a monkey." Like, okay, well, it doesn't look like a monkey. It looks like a man to me. But anyway, back to this blue on the forehead here. I mean, Nipsey was a Crip. What does a Crip wear on his head? A bandana. And if he's not wearing a bandana, he's thinking about, Crips. So it was appropriate on the forehead. That's where the mentality was. And that's blue. That's a blue color there on the painting. See how all of these things are related to Nipsey? All right. It doesn't stop there. So going back to this FKGD, that was a ticker symbol. It's a reference to a company that was into mining, which could be a connection to 109, this number, standard industrial categorization, standard industrial category number, which relates to mining. This FKGD, it has the GD, which looks like God, and it's right over the head of this individual. So if you know anything about Nipsey, his real name was Ermias, which meant God will rise. Even in the man's name, there was God. God will rise was in his name. Like, what? Like, yes, that's the way it is, okay? So we've got all of that working for us. And if I'm not mistaken, I've covered everything that I found related to Jean-Michel Basquiat's painting. Or rather, I've covered everything that supports this theory of mine that states that this painting was of Nipsey Hussle. It was and surprisingly, miraculously, it was created 3 years before Nipsey Hussle was even born, because it resembles a picture that was probably taken around 2013 when Nipsey was in Japan, an Asian country. All right. It doesn't stop there. One last thing, y'all. One last thing. It's this curious little symbol here. And it says paw. Oh, you know what? I just got it. I just got it. I just got it. Okay. A paw can be a hand, right? Well, it's an appendage. It's what an animal uses. A paw is the foot, right, of the animal. But if we're not talking about an animal, we're talking about a man, the paw would be the hand, right? It would be the hand. So it just came to me right now. It's March 24th, 2025. What time is it now? 11:45. It just came to me, paw. Okay. And then we do have the image of the hand right here too. We do have the image of the hand. What would be really wild is if Nipsey Hussle was left-handed. That's something I'm not sure of. I think he was right-handed. I don't have any signs that show that he was left-handed. But here's the thing, right? This little image here that looks like the EKG reading, okay, which also could, initially I thought it meant like it was a flat line, and it was showing that, okay, it was kind of saying like, all right, Nipsey was shot and Nipsey was killed, and then this was a flat line. Well, you know what? You know what this looks like? It looks like Nipsey Hussle's signature. His hand, paw, hand signature. That's what it looks like. Boom, y'all. Nipsey Hussle right here, painted by Jean-Michel Basquiat in 1982, 3 years before Nipsey was even born. What could that possibly mean? What could that possibly say? Well, Chuck D has an explanation as to how a work of art like this could even come to fruition. He explains it. Chuck D from Public Enemy, Fight the Power fame, he explains how all of this is even possible. How did Jean-Michel Basquiat end up painting Nipsey Hussle? How did Jean-Michel Basquiat end up creating a picture of Nipsey Hussle that was painted 3 years before Nipsey Hussle was even born? How is that even possible? Jean-Michel Basquiat used drugs, heroin, marijuana, possibly cocaine. I'm not going to get all alcohol, of course. He certainly died of a heroin overdose, and marijuana was, of course, he smoked marijuana. That was just the drug that was everywhere. How does that happen? Well, Chuck D, the great Chuck D of Public Enemy, he's going to explain, I think, how Jean-Michel Basquiat did it. But Chuck D is not talking about Jean-Michel Basquiat. He's talking about his own experience. I am so unique. Al-Farid is the name that I was given in the Middle East. They misspelled. I told them they corrected my name. I told them my name was Alfred. They heard Al-Farid, which means unique. I'm so unique that I was in attendance at this very meeting when Chuck D told his ayahuasca story. This was 3 years ago. I heard it. It resonated with me. It piqued my curiosity. But I didn't hear it the same way that I'm listening to it tonight. Tonight is when I went back, I revisited it, I listened to it, and I thought to myself, wow, that is a missing piece. That is a piece to the puzzle of this whole thing about Jean-Michel Basquiat painting this painting of Nipsey Hussle. So the great Chuck D is going to explain the process, how this art comes to fruition. How does it come to us? It's pretty deep, y'all. Peace and blessings. IC 10-9.
She was at her house. Get me a stack of paper and bring me down some pens. Now this is the real shit, y'all. It doesn't say it's gonna work for everybody because everybody got different whatever. She gave me a stack of paper, half a ream, and a stack of pens. We had the ayahuasca administered. Remember, ayahuasca is the sacrament. DMT is the materials. It's really illegal, whatever. But it was administered at the top of the 4 hours. I had done 83 illustrations for 4 hours. And I just sat in one spot in the living room. And my hands were drawing from the energy on out. Now, a sketching technique is you usually do the outline and you go in. That has been my whole life. Mm-hmm. This was different. I was sketching the energy and it formed the outline.
Wow.
So for 73 illustrations. And the thing about it, when I was doing it, I didn't even have to look at the paper. And my head was clear as a bell, like we talking right here. Mm-hmm. And when I stopped, whoop, then the room started to bend. So I was going back to my hand, and it was just doing the illustrations. And when it came down, of course, you know, you come down a little bit, you rest, you take your enzyme or whatever, and my hands were doing this. And from that point on, I've made 18,000 illustrations.
Wow.
18,000. And now all these illustrations are actually almost dealing with how we see energy from the universe. So somebody might look at my illustrations and I can't even release them publicly because they'll be like, what the, you know? They'll say they dope though. It looked dope, and then they'll end up saying, well, I don't think this doesn't come from you. And I'm like, yeah, these are not Chuck D illustrations. So what you're seeing the style actually come out very kinetic. The style is kinetic. So I have a kinetic style. And I learned how to actually do the inside working.
Yeah, it's great.
I feel like the homie just was Jesus Christ, you feel me, on earth.
Is that right?
Hell yeah, that's how I feel.
Sure.
So I'm like, damn, Jesus Christ was my friend. You feel me? I've been through some real shit with the homie.
Yeah. It's crazy
You know
how
what
we
I'm
know,
saying?
how we figure out after, like he was an angel on earth. He was here to teach us.
But see,
And then
certain
he
people,
had to go.
like, I've been knew the homie was different. I used to tell him,
Is that right?
like, well, yeah, hell yeah. Like,
What'd you say?
I just when certain shit happened, like, after he done certain shit, or we have a conversation and he tell me his side and what he think, and he's like, bro, you different, you special.
Wow.
Yeah, that was regular though, like, you know what I'm saying? But I'm glad that I got to tell the homie how I felt about him when he was here.
Yeah, it's great.
I feel like the homie just was Jesus Christ, you feel me, on earth.
Is that right?
Hell yeah, that's how I feel.
Sure.
Jesus' family line, in terms of as a dynasty, was the Hasmonean dynasty at the time. And their symbol of their household was a panther, a black panther. Jesus' family line, in terms of as a dynasty, was the Hasmonean dynasty at the time. And their symbol of their household was a panther, a black panther. Jesus' family line, in terms of as a dynasty, was the Hasmonean dynasty at the time. And their symbol of their household was a panther, a black panther.
Reverend Clay? Well, I think the basic reason or symptom or proof for the racism of the Christian church is the simple fact that white people have pretended for so long that Jesus was white, and that they've had the necessity to interpret Jesus as being white, when essentially white Christianity is racially, is historically false and theologically absurd, and practically, in terms of its effect on black people, it's a debasing institution that enslaves black people. I think we have to understand, though, that we're not making moral judgments here. Any institution that exists in any society exists to serve the interests of the people who set it up. And Christianity began as a black man's religion. It's an African religion. We have to remember that Israel went into Egypt with 70 people, and after approximately 750 years came out with over 2 million people, and hordes of other slaves who came out and became also part of the emerging new nation of Israel. So Israel, the biblical Israel, was a black nation, an African nation that came out of Africa and kept constant ties with Africa. And so we have to remember then that Jesus was a black Messiah, not a white Messiah, and he comes out of the whole historical background of Africa, of African traditions, of African history, of African culture, the concept of communalism, the concept of a chosen people, the concept of kingdom of God on earth. All these things were out of African tradition, not out of the white man's tradition. And Jesus was essentially a revolutionary Messiah who was trying to lead a black people in a revolt, in a struggle and conflict with a white Gentile oppressor. So the whole church has to be viewed from the point of view of the white oppressor. The white oppressor has one kind of Christianity, has one kind of church. The black church has to become independent and go back to the historic African roots of Christianity, because the slave church that the white man set up for black people tends to continue the enslavement of black people. So the black church has to become, again, a revolutionary instrument in the hands of black people, controlled by black people, fighting, as Jesus fought, for the liberation of black people against white Gentile oppression.
October 9th, that's where it starts.
You see, it's the same old thing.